Good afternoon and welcome to TERC's Winter Science Speak seminar. My name is Jeff Schlotto, Director of the UC Davis Tahoe Environmental Research Center. To learn more about TERC, the research we conduct here and around the world, the public education we provide for the local and regional community, and our work with agencies here in the Tahoe Basin, please visit our website, tahoe.ucdavis.edu. You can also find out how to follow us on social media, how you can participate in our activities, and help support the work we do. One of our goals is to facilitate interaction, dialogue, and discussion, something that can be more difficult via Zoom and with social distancing. We will be attempting to address questions at the conclusion of today's presentations via the Q&A function on Zoom. Your microphones have been muted, so the only way to ask questions or make comments is to type them into Q&A, and our presenters will try to get to as many as they can. Before I introduce today's speakers, I wanted to say that the upcoming Science Speaks lectures will include the following. On March 18th, that's a month from today, Dr. Hannah Tierney, Assistant Professor in the Department of Philosophy at UC Davis, will be speaking on climate change conspiracies. A week later, March 25th, Dr. Fran Moore, Assistant Professor in the Department of Environmental Science and Policy, will be presenting on calculating the cost of climate change. And on April 22nd, Dr. Catherine Olmsted, Professor of History, will be speaking on the very timely issue of conspiracy theories and American democracy. It's now my pleasure to welcome and introduce our speakers. Yuan Cheng is a recent UC Davis Graduate School of Management alumnus and founding director of Shrimply Blue. He has over 10 years of experience in product management, sales operations, customer loyalty, and pursued his MBA to make an industry shift from software to sustainable food and agriculture. Roger De Lucinon is a he's Shrimply Blue board member, former healthcare executive and serial entrepreneur with over 25 years of executive management experience. In addition to working with Shrimply Blue, he provides executive mentorship to social entrepreneurs through the Miller Center's Global Social Benefit Institute. I should add at this point that the science that initiated Shrimply Blue was a result of TERC research, the funding for which came from both private philanthropy, the California Tahoe Conservancy, and the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. We're hopeful that this model of private and public investment is a model we can continue into the future. With that, let me turn over the mouse pad to Yuan. Yuan.
Hello, everyone. Great to be with you here today. Again, my name is Ewan, and I'm just going to kind of be taking you through an update on Shrimply Blue. For that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So just to give you a heads up for the agenda today, we're going to start with some introductions. I know I can't see you guys, but it's always a little bit more fun to know who the audience is and who I have the pleasure of talking with today. We'll give you a quick update on just our mission and vision, who we are at Shrimply Blue, what we're about, why dog treats, because that's always the question we get asked. And then we've been doing a lot of work since the last time we shared with you guys, which was back in July. So definitely want to give you guys a progress of just what we've been working on to date, a bit of timeline, key milestones, long-term outlook, and then finally Roger will be sharing with you guys about how you can help and get involved. So for introductions, we do have a bit of a poll just to help us know a little bit of where you're coming from, who we're talking with. So you should see that popping up on your screen right here. If you can go ahead and fill that out, that's just a fun way for me to know what you all love about Tahoe and your involvement with Mysis. Cool, and as those are trickling in, Heather, if you want to pull those up, it might be fun time to show some of those.
If I pull them up, it ends the polling. So there's still, I've got 36 of 53 voting right now. So we'll let people keep voting here.
Cool. Thank you, Heather. We'll let them keep voting. Then I will go ahead and introduce myself while you guys are going ahead and doing that. So a little bit more about me. I know Jeff kind of gave you guys my professional background. Just again, graduated from UC Davis, made that transition from software to food and agriculture. And really, I think what I enjoy doing most about kind of the business world is bringing together kind of diverse skill sets and backgrounds and figuring out ways that we can work together through interdisciplinary means to kind of solve real challenges. So this project here with Simply Blue obviously fits right into that sweet spot for me, which is why it's a joy to work on this one. You guys can obviously see my face on screen here. And since we're talking dogs, I didn't think of putting a picture of my current self. Instead, I have a picture of, this is me, I think at 4 years old with my dog there, Goldie Ball on the right. And in the bottom picture here, as you can see, I'm also the kind of guy that takes the time to play chess with his dog growing up. And I can definitely say I've never beaten him. He is 2-0 against me. I probably should have named him Kasparov. All right, cool. So I see the poll results coming in. Dog ownership here. Okay, about 50-50 split here. People who have dogs and don't. I see some of you guys have more than 3 dogs. That is very cool. Favorite thing about Tahoe. Okay, again, good split. It looks like hiking and biking is the winner at 40%. Close second is the scenery at 27%, and then skiing and snowboarding at 20%. Have you ever tasted Mysis? All right, 16% yes, 84% no. For the 16% yes, you should definitely email me at info@shrimplyblue.org and tell me what you thought of it. Just curious on that. And then the question 4, if you were offered cooked artisan Mysis, would you give it a try? 93% of you said yes. All right, that is very cool. Again, I so wish we could do this in person. One day we will. It would be so much fun to pass around some Mysis and have you guys eat it. Today, I will just be the one eating some of these Mysis dog treats out of prototype. So we'll have a taste test later and I'll tell you how it is. All right, cool. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into our mission and vision. So again, the name of our company, we are a nonprofit organization called Simply Blue. And we're a nonprofit on a mission to restore Tahoe's lake clarity, one dog treat at a time. Yes, you heard me right, dog treats. Right? And the question is, how on earth can your dogs help restore Tahoe's lake clarity? Let's dive in and find out. So just a little bit of background. It all starts with the state of the lake. Right? You guys are probably vastly familiar with the state of Tahoe's water clarity, but it's been on the decline since the 1960s. Right? Back in 1968, when we first started taking measurements of the water clarity, it's at about 102 feet of visual clarity. And by 1997, that clarity had declined to about 64 feet. And you guys are definitely aware that over the last 20 years, a ton of resources, energy, money, and time has been poured into trying to get this thing turned around. And while we've seen the decline kind of flatten out, we haven't reversed the trend, right? Meaning we haven't gotten back to what Tahoe used to be. And with threats like global warming, threatening to increase algae growth and things of that nature, I think we really are at a turning point here, right? Now is the time to get this turned around. Now, for the last 20 years, the conventional wisdom has been focused on reducing sediment from reaching the lake, right? So tourism has taken off at Tahoe, population has increased there. And so obviously a lot more traffic going on. And so that was kind of the conventional wisdom that if we can find a way to reduce sediment from reaching the lake, that's how we're going to see clarity improving. And that's where the majority of the focus has been. But over the last 10 years, the scientists over at the Tahoe Environmental Research Center have made a huge discovery, right? That it's not just the external sediment reaching the lake, but there's actually an internal problem with the lake ecosystem itself. So in the 1960s, exactly when tourism and activity in the basin area was starting to take off, there was an invasive species of Mysis shrimp that was introduced into the lake in an effort to support the recreational fishery. The challenge is Tahoe is a very deep lake. And so these Mysis actually end up sleeping on the lake floor during the day. And they only come up at night, which means they don't interact with the fish nearly as often as hoped. And the fish don't eat as much of them as hoped. Right? And so essentially the Mysis became a huge problem. They multiplied in the billions. And the Mysis are voracious consumers and target consumers of the native Daphnia. And here's the kicker, right? Daphnia used to roam freely in Tahoe, and they're filter feeders, right? They're eating like this. They usually eat tiny algal cells, and in the process also filter out the fine sediment particles, right? So in short, Daphnia used to act as Tahoe's natural water filters. With the Daphnia population greatly suppressed, Tahoe's water clarity can't recover, right? And Mysis are at the core of that problem. So this is a big statement, right? So where's the science backing this? And again, Professor Schlado can give you 200 pages on this, but I have one slide for you here. And this is really the data from 2012 to 2018, where the TERC scientists basically saw that on Emerald Bay, right, when the Mysis population mysteriously disappeared in 2012, as you can see here, Daphnia very quickly rebounded. The Daphnia population came back, and within just 2 years, we saw 25 feet improvement in water clarity. That is a huge improvement in water clarity in just 2 years. As Mysis population came back on Emerald Bay, you can see the Daphnia slowly gets dwindled again, and almost in a perfect correlation, the water clarity dwindles as well. Right, so this is a huge discovery, because what this highlights for us here is that Daphnia are the key to restoring water clarity, and Mysis are the core of the problem. And if we can remove the Mysis, or at least suppress their population, we can allow Daphnia to return and water clarity to return with it. I think this also says something about the state of the lake and the type of regenerative solutions that are needed to restore the lake. Right? Because if you think about traditional environmental practices, most of it is focused on doing less harm. Right? How do we maintain status quo in the environment? How do we limit the amount of harm we're doing? That's typically where environmental conservation goes to. And that works fine when the status quo is healthy. What we just saw in the last slide is that Tahoe's natural ecosystem has already been disrupted, and therefore maintaining status quo isn't good enough, right? So you've probably heard the saying that we no longer have the luxury of being less bad. And I think that is exactly the case for Tahoe today, right? We need to move from kind of sustainable environmental practices to regenerative practices where we're actually restoring the environment with our everyday activities. Now, how do we do that? Well, here's the thing, right? Tahoe sees millions and millions of visitors every year who come to, enjoy the scenery, enjoy the hiking, enjoy the skiing, right? Millions of people. And the question is, how do we mobilize these millions of visitors so that they can be part of the solution? Well, the nice news about Mysis is that they turn out to be a superfood. The Professor Juliana Bell at UC Davis, who's a PhD in food science, was kind enough to run the analysis for us. And you can see here on the dry Mysis in the nutrition breakdown, 58% protein, 22% lipids. And the really amazing part is of that 22% lipids, 33% of that is the highly sought after omega-3 fatty acids that you hear about all the time in fish oils, right? Now, Tahoe Mysis are an amazing source of omega-3s because the Mysis spend all day eating the zooplankton in the water, right? And so they turn out to be a superfood which simply raises the question, what can we do with them? So our solution is actually pretty simple, hence the name Shrimply Blue. And we are starting with good science, we're gonna target harvesting the Mysis through a value-added process, create all natural dog treats, and then distribute them through a direct-to-consumer relationship. Again, the idea here is to build that network and community of Tahoe-loving dog owners that want to be part of seeing Tahoe restored. As a nonprofit, 100% of our proceeds go right back towards restoring the environment, towards funding research, and that's the model we're after because, again, the focus here primarily is on the environment first. That's what we're about. And the second piece of it is raising awareness. How can we get the community involved? And the last piece is having a financial model that is ultimately self-sustaining, which is pretty exciting as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So that's our mission, that's our vision, that's who we are about. The big question, why dog treats, right? How did we go from Mysis to dog treats? And really, dog treats are the perfect fit. Okay, there's three things here that make them the perfect fit. The first is functionality. When you look at what people want in the dog treat market, 71% of dog owners are looking for treats that offer extra nutrition. Okay, again, Tahoe Mysis are an incredible source of omega-3s, and they have that strong shrimpy flavor. Okay, I've eaten a good amount of Mysis over the last year, and I would say that the shrimp flavor is robust. The dogs love that, right? Dogs love things like salmon skin. They love things like freeze-dried beef liver. It's right there with their palate and what they're looking for. And so as a functional treat, it's not only delicious to dogs, it's also healthy for them. Sustainability. So I think as we humans are becoming increasingly aware of the impact on the environment that the way we eat and the way we produce our food has, we've naturally trickled that down into our pets too. We want our pets to eat sustainably. You look at some of the companies that I've listed on here, Wild Earth, Jiminy's, Chippin, Shameless Pets, what they all have in common, and they're all pretty new to the game, is that they have an environmental bent. Wild Earth, vegan pet treats, Jiminy's and Chippin uses cricket protein, Shameless Pets, upcycled materials. They've all have been in the news lately for their sustainable bent, and really it's this idea that pets can be part of the solution. Well, what we're doing here at Tahoe at Shrimply Blue is not just sustainable, but regenerative, right? Because literally every bite, every time your dog eats one of our treats, they're helping to take a bite out of the mysis problem and bring back water clear. The last piece of it, and this might be my favorite, is the humanizing aspect. 81% of Americans consider their dogs to be equal members of their family. They want dogs to be part of the journey. And I think to us, family means shared mission and purpose. This idea that you and your dog can save the planet together is something that I'm super excited about. I mean, you saw those earlier pictures of me growing up with my dog, playing chess with my dog. And there's just this sense that life is better when you get to do it with your dog, right? Whether that's throwing a Frisbee, going hiking, going bike riding, just snuggling at home or surviving shelter in place. It's always more fun when our dogs are involved. So why not, bring our dogs into this amazing journey of saving Tahoe's water clarity and getting that turned around. When I see people doing things with their dogs together and not just having fun, but really on mission together, I think that actually strengthens the bond between the pet owner and the pet. And that's something that we want to be a part of, is helping people to have that shared bond with their dogs and take it to even the next level. So progress to date, what have we been up to? So first of all, I'm going to do a little bit on the food science side, and then I'm going to talk a little bit on the trawling side. Okay, so on the food science side here, this is a little bit more of a deep dive into the fatty acid comparisons. When you guys typically hear omega-3s, what do you guys think of? You probably think salmon, right? I think that's one of the most common healthy sources of omega-3s that we're all familiar with. And so what I've shown here on screen is a simple side-by-side comparison. Tahoe mysis on the left, salmon here on the right. Most of these are going to be on a dried basis, okay? And first of all, I want you to notice, draw your eyes to the protein. So very similar on a protein level. On the total lipids, the salmon has more fats, right? Salmon is a very fatty fish, probably what makes it taste so good. About 38% of salmon is typically going to be lipids compared to 22% mysis. But if you look at the breakdown of those fatty acids, right? 16% of the salmon is going to be omega-3 and 11% omega-6. Compare that to Tahoe mysis, 33% is omega-3, 12% omega-6. So again, if you're talking on a percentage basis, which one of these are a better source of omega-3s, if that's what you're after, Tahoe mysis wins out, right? Again, this is data coming from the food scientists over at UC Davis. And when they first saw this, they themselves were blown away, right? They were like, man, mysis is an incredible source of omega-3 fatty acids. The next piece is the product development side. So we're working with food scientists over at UC Davis to actually develop these treats. Number one, of course, is food safety. So we've kind of run through all of your typical tests for foodborne as well as waterborne pathogens. Also looked at things like cyanotoxins, because I know that's a big one for dogs. And thankfully, everything's come back past so far. So looking good there. We've been doing several prototypes. We have looking at a mixture of sweet potato and pumpkin. The ones I have right here are going to be sweet potato. Is our current formulation, and we're continuing to just refine that to make sure the taste is there, the sensory analysis is there, as well as all of the shelf life, food safety is there. So doing all that good work there. A short video here of some dogs eating these treats. And so that's always a big question for us, right? Do dogs actually like these? If I'm looking at those dogs, they look pretty happy with these treats and wanting more. And I'll go ahead and give this a taste as well. I know it's weird that I'm eating dog treats, but they're made with all natural ingredients. So I feel pretty good about this. Yeah, and again, it's got a nice shrimpy flavor. You can definitely taste the sweet potato in this particular prototype. And it's good, right? I've done a decent amount of taste testing with different companies' dog treats to date. And I will say that the ones that we have here made with Tahoe Mysis are my favorite of the bunch. Cool. So now a little bit about trawling. That's obviously a huge piece of what we're doing here. And the scientists over at TERC have done a ton of work over the last 2 years doing the trawling, trying to understand that. So just a little bit on the process here. You see here, here's the vessel with that mid-water trawl in the blue going behind. This trawling has to be done at night. So if you get a chance to talk with Brant Allen, it was definitely a labor of love out there at night. There's videos of him with a frozen glove as he's trawling for the Mysis there. Doing all the research on the shrimp, freezing it, and this is what they look like dehydrated. They're pretty small, but they pack a flavorful punch. In terms of the actual trawling and what we're doing, the secret here is that the Mysis congregate just below the thermocline in the late summer and fall seasons. Okay, so again, the Mysis during the day sleeping on the floor, Lake Tahoe floor, probably not going to be able to get to that depth to pull them up. But they come up at night and they're eating at night. Now, for most of the year, they're going to be pretty dispersed throughout that water column. So it's going to be very inefficient to try to remove them. But during the summer and fall seasons, when the temperature change is greatest between night and day, you're going to get that kind of clear thermocline where the water is changing temperature. And the Mysis like to congregate just under that thermocline. So what we have here, and this is a image provided to me by Brant Allen from TERC, is a transect on Emerald Bay. So you can kind of see the path that was taken here, just across Emerald Bay during the fall season. And here is kind of the echogram of the Mysis. And what you'll see is they're pretty much all congregated within that same vertical depth, right? And so if we can come through here with the trawling net, you're pretty much getting the majority of the Mysis that's in that water right there. And it's a thin blanket across kind of the entire surface. So you just got to go back and forth and they're all right there for the targeting. Now, the TERC team over the last 2 years has been kind of doing that trawling, and they've been able to achieve about 3 kilograms an hour, again, with their research vessel, testing things out as they go. We've been talking with professional trawlers as well as professional net designers about building a system that's going to scale up, right? And we believe we can target closer to 60 kilograms per hour. How are we going to get this 20x improvement in efficiency? Well, there's several things, right? First of all, we're going to be using a much more powerful boat, and therefore we can pull a much larger net, right? The drag isn't going to slow us down as much. So you can see here a much larger net opening at similar trawl speeds. The targeting is going to be a huge piece of it. So when Brant was out there doing it, they didn't have real-time pressure sensors. So essentially they had to pull a trawl across, pull it up, take a look at the pressure sensor, were we at the right depth, drop it back down, do that again, right? So a lot of stop and go to make sure they're at the right depth. These guys we're talking with, as with professional equipment, they'll have real-time pressure sensors. So you know exactly where the Mysis are, you know exactly how deep your net is, where the trawl opening is. So you're targeting them 100% of the time, right? Going right through that thermocline layer. The other piece of it is just better equipment. So we've been talking with these guys and they're talking about, high-speed winches to pull up the cod ends, using multiple cod ends that are going to be attached with a zipper. So you just pull it in, unzip it, put on a new cod end, throw that right back out into the water. And so you have very little downtime. So you're almost trawling the entire time you're on the water. And lastly, I'm sure Brant did a great job out there as a researcher, but these guys are professionals with years and years of trawling experience, and importantly, trawling experience for environmental reasons. Right? So they're very cognizant of making sure they're not disrupting anything in the environment that we're not intending to disrupt. So focusing on the Mysis here. So with all of those changes of just talking with these guys, again, we're targeting that 60 kilograms per hour, but we're pretty confident that we'll be able to move at least in that direction with these guys here. having kind of shared some of that, the last piece of this really is the amount of collaboration going on this effort. So, I mean, right, my background, you guys heard earlier, software, right? So what on earth am I doing here? And again, I said what I enjoy and my sweet spot is helping to bring people together from a diverse set of backgrounds. And I think what's amazing is there's enough people who love Lake Tahoe that they've just volunteered their time to help make this work. So you can kind of see here on our board of directors, Jeff, Veronica, and Roger, just right there, we have a ton of just Tahoe loving, dog loving, scientists and business expertise right there on our immediate board. Our board of advisors, we've got Harold Schmitz, who's a partner with the March Fund. If you're not familiar with the March Fund, they basically focus on what they call food 3.0. So food that's going to be regenerative for the planet. We've got Professor Juliana Bell, who's a PhD in food science at UC Davis, that's helped us with so much of the initial analysis. And then Neil Wilcox, he's the former VP of confectionery and VP of R&D pet care at Mars, right? In which he's been amazingly helpful. Essentially, we have somebody with 20 to 30 years of experience, specifically at the largest kind of pet care and pet food and treat provider in the world, giving us advice. So that's amazing from an experiential standpoint. And then our immediate team, again, we're very closely tied with UC Davis. So everyone from our team is either about to graduate or has recently graduated from UC Davis. And it's gonna be a mix of food scientists, myself on the business side, as well as people in kind of the creative and design thinking side of the business to really think through not only the branding, but also how do we build a community that's really gonna, and a business that's really gonna be regenerative, right, in the entire process. Over here on the right on the slide, I also am showing some of our other collaborators. So obviously Shrimply Blue is working very closely with the Tahoe Environmental Research Center at UC Davis. I'm thankful for their partnership. We are also kind of currently running a business case challenge with the UC Davis chapter of the Veterinary Business Management Association, as well as the UC Davis chapter of Students for One Health. So that's a super fun one just to get, so many vet students in one room and their kind of feedback on what we're doing. And then Net Systems, as well as Hickey Bros Research, are kind of the current trawlers and net designers that we're working with. So I think as you look at this right here, this is a challenging problem, but I think we have the right just people in the room to provide the different perspectives to start tackling this. And of course, we're always looking for additional partnerships and ways that we can collaborate to really think holistically about this challenge, right? How do we remove the Mysis, create a quality product, and engage the local community? So a little bit on kind of our milestones and our long-term outlook. So this one here is a little bit of an eyeful. My day job, I guess, on the side is a financial data analyst. So if you want to dig into this with me a little bit more, just reach out. Always happy to talk Excel spreadsheets. Sometimes I dream in Excel spreadsheets, unfortunately. But to spare you all the pain of that, I'm going to just kind of focus on a few high-level items here. Okay. So the first thing, and probably the most interesting thing, is that we actually believe that this project, even though it's a nonprofit, has the potential for positive returns, right? Because we're engaging the community in a consistent manner. That in of itself is huge because it means that this project can potentially pay for itself down the road. Okay. So if you just look at our timeline a little bit, years 1 through 4, yeah, we're going to need some donations and investments to get off the ground there. Trawling the Mysis is not cheap. Working with professional fishermen who know what they're doing is not cheap, but we think the right thing to do in order to make sure we are doing, the best possible things for Lake Tahoe and removing as much Mysis as possible. And so the first 4 years really is working with these professional trawlers. We're going to be contracting them out, and that's why it's going to be a little bit more expensive for us to clean up Emerald Bay and Lake Tahoe. Once we've kind of proved that out and they've shown us the ropes and how to do this professionally, the plan is for them to then transition the vessels, the equipment, and have us start hiring our own personnel to be able to do that. That essentially creates a potential kind of new industry on Tahoe. And at that point is when we will start seeing some of those economic returns here, right? Any net income at the end of the day would be spent towards, after covering the cost of harvest, would basically go back towards funding research on the lake, as well as kind of community development areas. we expect to be able to see a nice return for about 10, 12 years here. And then eventually the goal, right, is to remove the mysis. And so as the mysis population gets down to a target of 27 individuals per square meter, we will never be able to fully remove them. But if we can suppress them, the Daphnia can come back and water clarity can be restored. So once we get down to that level, it just becomes a matter of sustaining them and keeping them down at the 27 individuals per square meter or less. And the other thing here is these mysis are actually invasive in lakes throughout Western North America. So if, as we finish our work on Tahoe here, the water clarity is getting restored and we have these vessels that are just sitting there, it becomes a question of, okay, which other lakes can we go help out with the same solution, right? So taking it there. So again, when we look at this whole thing, I think probably the most exciting piece of this is the fact that we're involving the community using a consumer good produced from the mysis that is actually very tasty and healthy, and being able to be self-sustaining in the long term. Right? We're talking about $4.5 million upfront years, 3 through 4 right there. And for the next 10, 15, 20 foreseeable future, we don't need any additional kind of funding from the government or anything like that, and we can make this work. So that's pretty exciting. In terms of short-term milestones, because I know anytime you see a 15-year financial projection, it's going to be wrong because all projections are wrong, right? But it's just there to kind of give us a sense of where we're going. But I do want to talk about some of the short-term milestones because I think these are going to be critical. Okay, so the first thing is our immediate next step is to raise enough money so that we can clear Emerald Bay. I showed you guys that the data from TERC previously from 2012. We essentially want to recreate that by trawling Emerald Bay and removing the mysis there. Right, so the mysis population in Emerald Bay is isolated from Tahoe, and which just makes it a really nice case study, right? Because Tahoe will take years and years to trawl and remove. We're talking about 15 years to see kind of the end results. Emerald Bay, we believe we can do that in one season, right? So if we can get enough money to get those professional trawlers out on Emerald Bay in one season, we believe we can remove the mysis population below the 27 individuals per square meter. And in so doing, start to see Daphnia come back within 12 months and water clarity restored on Emerald Bay within 24 months. So that would be really exciting to be able to just prove out that model that everything works as expected. Once we have a chance to kind of prove that out, then we start moving on to Lake Tahoe, right? Then we start trawling Lake Tahoe, improving our efficiencies, eventually kind of purchasing the vessels from these professional trawlers, kind of bringing that in-house into a industry on Tahoe there, and then continuing to scale up from there, again, moving towards a 15-year timeline. I think one of the really nice things about the way this is mapped out with our milestones is that it's an iterative approach, right? So we're not asking for the entire 15 years right now. We're asking for help to get to the next milestone. And the other piece of it is because this is a labor of love, right? You literally have humans doing the trawling and then humans creating the pet treats. It puts a lot in our control from an environmental standpoint, right? So we're not introducing, chemicals. We're not introducing any sort of other species into the lake, right? And so what that means is that if for some reason there are any sort of adverse effects or things aren't going the way we expect, we can pause our trawling or stop it altogether, and the lake will return right back to the status quo it is today, right? No long-term negative risks. Right? So this is essentially all upside with very little long-term risk, other than my time and the team's time that we're currently spending on it. So our first fundraise to get us through the first 18 months, which would allow us to essentially trawl Emerald Bay this coming fall 2021, and then monitor it over the next 12 months. We're looking for $1.5 million upfront. All right, why $1.5 million, and what would we be able to do with that? So again, number one, it's the custom net design, trawling Emerald Bay, get it down to less than 27 individuals per square meter. We can do that in one season, and then monitor Emerald Bay for the return of Daphnia and water clarity. The second piece of it is it allows us to bring the mysis dog treats to market. So the number one most important thing for us when it comes to food is always food safety, right? So there's just all the testing that we need to do around that to make sure our food is as tasty and as safe as can possibly be, doing all the shelf life testing, all the FDA regulations, things of that nature, really doing it by the book. So we have a really solid treat that we can feel good eating myself and giving to dogs. I think the 1.5 million would help us build that treat, feel really confident about it, as well as start to engage the consumer community of Tahoe loving dog owners to work with us from there. And then the last thing that the 1.5 million would do is pilot trawl the broader Lake Tahoe. So the Mysis population in Emerald Bay is isolated from Tahoe. It's also a little bit different. And so we want to do some more research on the broader Tahoe population, as well as test out trawling in the broader lake. We would be able to accomplish that with the 1.5 million as well. And that basically starts to set the stage for what it looks like as we scale up to phase 2 of this project. So that's kind of what we've been doing to date. So as you can see, I think the last time I had a chance to share here at TERC was back in July. A lot has happened since then. I'm probably most excited again about just the team that we have behind what we're doing, and this idea that our dogs are going to be part of saving Lake Tahoe. Again, anything that I've shared here today that has been exciting or cool comes from the team. I really just pull the team together, and that's my role. But it's a ton of fun to work with the team. And again, we have a lot of expertise working on this project here. If we're excited about the project, it's obviously not without its risks, but again, huge potential upside for what we can do for Tahoe with very little negative risks involved here. So very excited for this. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Roger, who's going to share a little bit about how you can help.
Thanks, Ewan. So I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about some of the fundraising that we're doing and our strategy. Then to kick that off, I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes about kind of what has inspired me. So, I'm a San Francisco native, grew up a longtime lover of Tahoe and dogs. And the thing that excites me about Shrimply Blue is to be able to make this highly visible material change for the good of the Lake Tahoe basement. We're talking taking it from 60 feet of clarity to 80 feet or above. And that is an amazing visible change that I'm super excited to be a part of. My thing is I'm hoping that I can bring my experience as an entrepreneur, taking companies from white paper to reality to really help move this thing forward. As Ewan mentioned, the collaboration and the multidisciplinary nature of the work has really been impressive. When I first got involved and saw the work, as much of you are being exposed to here, just the quality of the thinking and the quality of thought and planning that's gone into this, it's really impressive. As a person who has seen along many young companies, this is really very, very high quality work. And I'm also excited that just seeing the chat and the Q&A, that I'm seeing that enthusiasm in this audience, and that is terrific. We're very thrilled to see that. So as Ewan mentioned, we are in the process of raising seed capital so that we can move into production in this first season. And so we really have a three-pronged approach to this effort. The first is we're targeting the community that lives here part-time and full-time, community-based businesses, and the folks that visit Lake Tahoe. We are going to be initiating a Kickstarter campaign to our future customers so that they can have an opportunity to get in on the ground floor, help get this initiative underway, get a little bling, and really be a part of this and part of this overall community that's taking on this effort. And then there are some specific grants that we are have submitted and are submitted to various funding sources. And so those are really the three prongs to our initial fundraising activities. The other piece that we're launching is this developing communication channels, and those communication channels are media. You may be aware we got tremendous media coverage last year as this was developing. We want to reinitiate that process so that we can update the broader community, and also include the ask so we can move this from whiteboard into reality. The second piece is a social media campaign to feed donations, as well as the process of gaining kind of Kickstarter-like support. And then the third area that we've identified are homeowners associations, so that we can leverage their mailing lists, their newsletters, because we want to be able to get to those homeowners that have a vested interest in the clarity of Lake Tahoe. How is it you can help? Your financial support, of course, would be welcome, but also contact information for homeowners association and influencing them to partner with us in this communication effort. The other piece is this is going to be an effort to make this happen. And so to the extent that those of you out there are interested in volunteering with the fundraising activity, right now we're a small but mighty committee, but we really need more help. This is going to take a village to complete this effort. And so if anyone is out there interested, wants to get involved, wants to help us in the fundraising activities, please get in touch with us. We welcome that help. With that, that's all that I had prepared. I know we have a lot of Q&A that's come in, and I think Jeff is going to facilitate that, and we'll look forward to answering the questions in the time we have left.
Well, thank you, Roger. Thank you, Ewan. Yeah, we have lots of questions in the Q&A. We also have lots of questions in the chat. So if you put a question in chat while we're addressing the first questions, it'd be great if you could put it in Q&A. So I will try to pass these questions out as best I can. So the first one, I think, could probably best be answered by Ewan. What types of preservatives are added to the dog treats?
Yeah, great question. So we're definitely going for a clean label, kind of an all-natural approach here. So right now, the only thing we're looking at is mixed tocopherols, which is basically vitamin E. And what that does is to help preserve the omega-3 content and keep it from going rancid. Again, it's an all-natural ingredient. We would like to not add anything else in there. We're also looking at some kind of natural hickory flavoring. Again, that's all natural, but that helps with preventing molds. We are working with, again, the food science team and our advisors over at Mars to really come up with a formulation that's going to be clean label, but also shelf stable. And that's our goal. But those are kind of the preservatives that we're looking at right now, both of which are all natural.
Okay, so is the key to not getting desirable plankton conducting at night? And do you get other plankton? Do you want to answer this, Ewan, or do you want me to answer that?
You can probably go for it.
Okay, so this was a concern of ours, is inadvertently removing desirable species. So the reason for harvesting at night is that the mysis migrate up to the surface, and that's when we can catch them in mid-water without disturbing the bottom. Other plankton don't have that vertical migration, so they're always there. The key is the size of the net. And so the size of the net we have is designed to capture the mysis, but most other plankton are far smaller. And in all the work we did at Emerald Bay, there really weren't any significant numbers of other plankton involved. Anything to add to that, Ewan? No. In that case, I will give you the next question. The bottom line question: how much do you plan to sell a box of dog treats for?
Yes, good question. So right now we are still playing with the sweet spot for that. We're looking at about 5-ounce packages right now, which would have about 30 of these kind of bite-sized pieces. And we're looking at right now anywhere between $7 to $10, $7 to $11 for a package like that. A lot of this comes down to how much mysis we're going to put into the formulation, right? And so we're still playing with that a little bit, trying to hone down that formulation to make sure it's got enough shrimpy flavor. We're using enough of the mysis, but it's also not so expensive that it's out of the ballpark for people. The other piece we're also looking at is from a just model. Do we want to sell it at a little bit lower price point so it reaches more people, and then suggest a donation on top of that that will go specifically towards the environmental costs? so that it's kind of an optional donation, but a suggestion there. So still kind of playing with that a little bit. On our website, you'll see a place where you can sign up to kind of get pre-notified when we start pre-selling. So if you sign up there, we'll definitely let you guys know about our progress in both the formulation as well as sort of what we're thinking around packaging and pricing.
All right, next question is, how do you ensure what happens to species caught in the net that are not Mysis? I guess maybe I'll field this. So I already referred to the Daphnia and other zooplankton, phytoplankton that may be caught in the net. Maybe what this we're referring to here could be fish that are caught in the net. This is commonly referred to as bycatch. That was one of the concerns in the work we were doing at Emerald Bay, and we kept track of any fish that were caught. We had very little. I don't have the numbers at hand, but it was very little. And because of the troll speed, when the net was brought to the surface, those few fish that were sometimes there were released and swam away. I should say that the depth that we're trawling at is kind of a sweet spot. You have the kokanee salmon that are in shallower water, and you have the lake trout that are deeper. So generally, it was just kokanee occasionally when the net was brought to the surface that got caught up in the net. So that's, to date anyway, hasn't proven to be a concern. Another question about consulting professional fisheries scientists in terms of productivity and sustainability of the resource. We did have somebody involved in that area early on. That's sort of on the priority list of trying to build population models for the Mysis. So just to be able to see whether the rate at which we're going to have to trawl in order to outcompete the reproduction rate of the Mysis. So when Ewan mentioned the idea of the proceeds from this effort supporting science, that's one of the kinds of things that it would be helping. That question's been asked already. Okay, when and where can we purchase the Mysis dog treats? Show us the dog food. Don't just eat it all.
Cool. So again, our number one concern right now is food safety. So before we give anything to your lovely dogs and pets out there, we want to make sure that it is fully tested, right? So we're currently going through the prototyping process. Once we have our kind of formulation down to where we're happy with the flavor, the texture, kind of all of that, we will have to do shelf life testing just to make sure it's good for however long we stay on the package, targeting a year here. We will probably have the first opportunity to what we call pre-sale, right? Which is going to be sometime in Q2. I'm thinking May, June timeframe is when you can see exactly what the treats are going to be like. We're not going to harvest Emerald Bay until fall of 2021, which means we'll probably produce and actually deliver the treats later. So I'll call it late fall, right? The October, November timeframe is when you would actually get the treats. But again, to just help us out, if you're excited about it, sign up for the newsletter. You'll hear about everything we're doing from a product development standpoint. We might even ask you some questions. So you can give us feedback on exactly what you want to see in these treats. And then pre-sale will be sometime in Q2, late Q2, May, June. And then delivery of our first treats will be Q4, late Q4.
I wanted to note that Ewan is very concerned about giving the dog treats to the dogs until they're proven safe, but we're okay giving them to Ewan.
Yeah, I'd rather test them myself,
So hopefully your chess game is improving. Is anybody, or are you working on Mysis for humans other than yourself? Human food.
We are happy to explore that in the future. We just thought that going out the door, it would be better to focus on kind of one product and one brand. Once this starts to build momentum and we have an engaged community, yeah, we can go from there. I have a vision of, in non-COVID days, doing a Mysis cook-off in the Tahoe community as a fundraiser. And I'm glad 93% of you said you would be down to try some artisan mysis. I think that would be just a super fun way to get that conversation started.
Okay, this is an interesting question, and maybe either of you may want to address it. So this goes to the idea of could you basically subcontract? Could you have somebody else providing the mysis and you buying them, and Shrimply Blue focusing on the treat development and the marketing and all of that?
I can start this one. Roger, feel free to jump in if you have anything. So first 3 years, that's essentially what we're doing, right? We are paying for contract fishermen who know what they're doing to come out and targeted harvest the mysis. And then we'll go from there. The challenge here is the mysis are very expensive to harvest as an invasive species, just generally speaking. And so being vertically integrated, meaning us having both the capacity to trawl ourselves and then make the treats ourselves, helps us reduce our costs of goods, right? Really, this is a kind of a bit of a different business model as a nonprofit, and just being vertically integrated every step of the way from harvest to production to distribution, right? Direct to consumer, helps us really keep the costs down so that we can actually make this a self-sustaining model to be most efficiently eliminate the mysis. I think adding in a third party is easier for us, but it'll also add cost to that, which might make it difficult to be self-sustaining down the road. Roger, if there's anything you want to add to that.
Or maybe Roger wants the next question. Why not cat treats?
We're dog lovers. I'm not, that's a great question. I don't know what I'm sure that was looked at early on.
I can speak to that a little bit. So generally speaking, in my experience, one, cats tend to be a little bit pickier eaters. So that's one. The second one, and this is a big one, is from a treat market standpoint, because there's so much more training that goes on with dogs, the dog treat market is much larger than the cat treat market, right? So the US domestic dog treat market is about $4 billion. And that's just significantly larger than the cat treat market. And so again, we could go down the cat treat route in the future, have cats be a part of it. I think would be great as well. But just to start us off, focusing on one brand, one product makes it a lot easier to get things going.
Oh, I like this next question. Since you are doing water quality enhancement by bringing back Daphnia's ecosystem services, should you be compensated by water quality agencies? I'm not going to answer this one.
I can put my dream state. Answer is yes, but no.
Well, I will answer it to say water quality agencies have funded research and actions at Tahoe for a long time. So if through these efforts, we can all be working towards the same goal and achieving clarity and other ecosystem services, then I think Shrimply Blue would be happy to call it even at the end of the day. Okay, now this is a question. This is a very pertinent question. So one of the audience is confused about whether Shrimply Blue wants to become a for-profit business seeking investment or to continue as a nonprofit seeking donations.
Roger, I'll start that off and then perhaps pass it over to you. So we are currently set up as a nonprofit. We're a very young nonprofit founded in December of 2020. So we are in the process of doing our 501c3 application with the IRS. The vision for us right now is to be a nonprofit organization because we really want the focus to be on the environment and kind of building community. That said, down the road, it's possible that we spin off a for-profit that is owned by the nonprofit. Again, it just kind of depends on the best organizational structure from a tax standpoint. The goal ultimately is how do we be most efficient about how we use our resources to kind of restore lake clarity. So that's kind of the long-term vision. Short term, we are open to partnering in multiple ways, and I can let Roger speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, one quick item with respect to kind of the for-profit, if you could do it as a for-profit, right? The initial analysis based upon what we know right now, the efficiencies, the economics, the market, suggests that this is not an attractive for-profit business, that has not been, that was not the key driver here. Like the key driver here was the clarity of the lake. And so this moment, the best way to achieve the goals are to keep this as a not-for-profit, and that's the intermediate term goal, and we'll see as we know more. With respect to supporting the organization get up and running, we actually have contemplated course taking donations, which we talked about, but we also have the ability to take on some debt. So to the extent that there are partners that want to support the organization by provision of debt, we have contemplated that within our planning processes. And so just let us know if that's something that you want to learn more about.
Okay, so have you tried to close the loop further by using locally produced product waste as the plant additive? Potatoes is given as an example.
So right now we have not yet, but I think given our mission and what we're about, and I see another question here about, can we use other invasive species, maybe plants in the lake as part of our formulation? That is definitely something that would be in line with our mission and vision. And so we would explore that, right? The plan here is, yes, we're starting with one product, one formulation, but we're gonna keep these food scientists on board on the team. And the idea is to continue to build out a portfolio of products around the Mysis as a centerpiece kind of ingredient. But the more that we can, use upcycling or use other invasives to kind of build these treats, the better. And so you'll see us continue to do product formulation and testing over time.
Another question on bycatch that I think has been answered with regard to both fish and apnea. That's not an issue, but then a question about permits that are needed for trawling. Permits are required, and we're actually talking with California Department of Fish and Wildlife and their Nevada equivalents at the present time. Okay. When do you think you'll be able to start offering job opportunities in Tahoe? I'm interested in volunteering my time at Tahoe as well. So we have that name noted, but could you address that first question, Ewan?
Yeah, sure. So right now we are definitely interested in partnering and volunteering. So I can say everyone on the team that I showed so far is currently all volunteers, technically speaking. But I think the plan is, we would love to partner with you to volunteer in the short term. And I think as we build out kind of this organization, we can start looking into a little bit more of what a staff team would look like from there.
And just, I guess, we did some back of the envelope calculations about how big an industry this might be 3-4 years down the line when there may be a number of boats operating. And it's something like 100 people. So it really could be a sustainable long-term industry in the region. Okay, back to the topic of supplementing what's in the dog treat. One question is, could pondweed or milfoil from aquatic invasive species harvesting be used? So if you're not familiar with those species, they're rooted plants that are a problem in parts of Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, so I think again on that, we haven't thought of it yet, but we would be, I think once we get off the ground, we would be happy to do some nutrition analysis and better understand what that looked like. So I think the exciting thing is for the food scientists on our team, like what drew them to this project was that they enjoy working with novel ingredients that are gonna have a sustainable regenerative impact on the planet, right? And so once they figure out how to use Mysis in this regenerative way, they're gonna wanna look at how do we use other items, potentially like milfoil or AIS. So I think that would be something we would definitely consider and play with in the future. But again, we're starting kind of with where we are today, and then we'll build out our product portfolio from there.
So it's always nice to finish with a financial question related to taxes, things like that. Have you considered a B Corp? And maybe in answering that, you could explain what a B Corp is.
Do you want to take this one first, Roger? Or you want me to take an initial cut at that? Okay, so we've looked at that, and again, I think from all the corporation standpoints, it's just that at the end of the day, the financial returns are not as attractive as you would typically like them to be, right? So we're looking at something like $4.5 million over the first 3 to 4 years, and then self-sustaining in the future with potential for positive returns. The current projected internal rate of return on this IRR is about 10%, right? And that's with our current assumptions of what we know. Typically, any sort of VC or investor is going to look for, 8 to 10x multiplier, right? Not a 10% return on that given the risk. And so just given that in of itself, it kind of pushed us out of any sort of for-profit corporation model, even in the social venture space. So we've talked with some groups there, they're still looking for a higher rate of return than 10%, given the amount of risk that's involved with something like this. And so given the nature of just what we're trying to do, we really felt like the strongest angle of what we're about that was kind of truest to our core and mission is the nonprofit side of it. It's a nonprofit with potential to pay for itself and positive returns, but the goal was really focused on the environment first, and that's why we went that route.
Okay, I could talk taxes all day. Let me see. I think it's 1 o'clock. I wanted to thank our speakers, Roger and Ewan. I wanted to thank our audience. If you have friends who weren't able to see it live today, it has been recorded, and so you can access that recording at TERC's website. Those of you wanting to learn more about Shrimply Blue, feel free to go to the website and contact Ewan or Roger. They'd be happy to answer your questions of any sort, be they technical or how you can get involved in any way, be it as volunteering, future employee, investing now. So with that, thank you all very much and hope to see you in exactly 1 month at our next seminar. Bye for now.